Well, first of all, when Peter Lanigan asks you anything, I think we've learned globally to say yes, because it's just the value added, you know. And I think Peter touched off something. I'm glad you said that, because I was going to open this by saying thank you to Basketball Australia, thank you to the Centre of Excellence, but thank you to Peter. Number one, for inviting me out here and being treated like a king. I came here on Thursday. I haven't slept in 4 days. I've been living 1 day over 4 days, which is interesting. And I'm having new experiences, meeting new people, but the strangest experience I'm having is I want my dinner at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm still on British time, so I'm slowly getting there. But Peter's right. We met over social media. And, you know, for any young coach in here who's been, or even if you've been coaching 20 years, like people ask, so I was at a clinic last night in Canberra with the Canberra kids, and we did a session on the court, and a 16-year-old gentleman came over to me and said thank you, and spoke to me as if he was a 35-year-old adult, and said to me, do you have any tips? He's a coach, 16 years old, unbelievable maturity. I said, yes. I said, two things, keep enjoying this. Do you enjoy it? Yes, I do. Keep enjoying it. And surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with people you can learn from. And that's what I did pre-COVID. Somebody introduced me to Zoom in 2018, believe it or not. Zoom existed before COVID. Who thought that? And, you know, I thought, like, I'm struggling to grow and get better in certain ways in the UK, if I'm being honest. Like, the Federation come to me each year and they say, how can we support your growth and development? And I don't mean to be arrogant, but I struggle to say what that is. And it's just because we don't have in our country, we don't have a Peter Lanigan. We don't have a Mike McKay. We don't have a Nenad Trunich. We don't. That's the reality. So British coaches spend a lot of time complaining about a lack of this stuff, coaches' clinics and support and provisions for coach development and so on. I was never going to take that perspective on it. I was going to find a way. And one way was Zoom. So I used to reach out to people like I said, Nenad Trunich, Mike McKay, Rob Beveridge, different coaches from all over the world, people I thought I could get value from. I was cheeky enough to go on their LinkedIn profile, look them up, never met them in my life, never met Peter. Any chance you got 30 minutes to talk about transition defense? Any chance you got 30 minutes talking about how you build a culture in your environment? Any chance you got 30 minutes to speak about so on? It was never 30 minutes, by the way. I mean, I was lying right off the bat, but that's all I wanted was 30 minutes. And Peter was one of those people that was kind enough to go to me, absolutely, I got 30 minutes. Again, it was never 30 minutes. So how do you say no to Peter Lanigan when somebody's so giving? Just listening to Patrick Hunt, I'm gutted he's not here. Somebody I followed for a long time, somebody I admire. I was looking forward to meeting him. So Peter, I've got to come back again. Where's Peter? Bring me back, please. But I just want to pick up on some things he said. But before I get there, I wrote a few notes here. This wasn't planned. Conference culture, I saw on the board earlier. Conference culture. And I think you're spoiled. And maybe you don't know. I think you're spoiled in this country when it comes to coach support, coach development, coach education. I'm very biased in that space because I've gone on a deep journey of trying to develop and better myself as a coach, from coaching clinics right through to a professional doctorate in coaching. And I'm very envious. Every year I see you guys put up the social media posts. We had 5,000 coaching clinics throughout the year of 2025. We qualified X many coaches. I think you're very lucky and you're very blessed. That doesn't happen in every country. And I think you in Canada are the leaders in that space. But when you said conference culture, my mind went to culture. And, you know, Simon, a colleague of mine, Kiwi guy who I run Movement Sports with, he defines culture as, very simply, people like us do things like this. And that's what I see from Australian coaching culture. People like us do things like this. You do things like this. You turn up to coaching clinics, you turn up to conferences, you provide them. I think that's amazing. Patrick talked about learning, which has set me up for what we're about to do. He talked about reflective practice and so on, so on, so on. And he talked about learning. He talked about learning. And something I'm struggling with lately, and I'm having some interesting conversations, particularly with some academics in the field of sports coaching and coaching development, is the term coach and actually how that's perceived by some people and the harm that's associated with the term coach. Because not all coaching is good. And there's a certain level of harm that's associated with the power dynamic of the hat, of wearing a head coach's hat. And I think that's fair to say. We've seen enough in the media and so on and so on, especially in the UK with gymnastics, if you don't know about that, and you want to challenge what I'm saying about the power dynamic, the harm associated with coaching, just read up what's happening in that space. But I would like to make a shift, and again, somebody help me shift my lens on this perspective. If you think of a coach as somebody who's a designer of learning, how do you then approach your job as a coach? If your definition of coaching or being a coach, if we shift the narrative, change the words, change the language, and we say, you are not a coach, you are a designer of learning, how will you then approach your season? Pro, under 12, doesn't matter. You are a learning designer. How do you plan your sessions then? How do you review your sessions then? The narrative shifts slightly. And reflective practice, again, just off the cuff here, Patrick talked about reflective practice. That's probably one of the most powerful things you can do to develop your ability as a coach, your competency, is to be a reflective practitioner. If I just go a level deeper, being a reflective practitioner or pursuing reflective practice, it's not enough. It's the entry to that journey. It only becomes powerful, or it becomes more powerful, when you share those reflections with somebody else. You know who does this better than coaches? The nursing industry. The nursing industry. A lot of these reflection cycles we come across emerged in nursing. And can you imagine the lack of time they have, stretched, but yet they have time to practice reflection, to reflect on the job they do with intention. And that's some of the stuff we'll share here today. I'm going to actually get on to what I'm supposed to be doing now, because Peter's he's really put me to the test here with 40 minutes, and I'm going to pace set. So for those of you that are very familiar with leadership styles, I'm going to pace set the hell out of this. But I think to close Patrick's speech, which I thought was fantastic, if you think of cycles as a thing that you can hang on to help you pursue things in different ways, one reflective cycle that I think is very powerful, and it's good to stop, check, and challenge yourself from time to time with these three questions. What am I doing? Player or coach, by the way. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And then, is there a better way to do it? So those ball screen coverages, what you've established as your culture, your way of coaching, the way you do video analysis, the way you engage with your players or not. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is there a better way to do it? Okay, moving on. So I think this actually sums up nicely. Have you got many years experience or 1 year's experience repeated many times? And again, you can see where I'm going with this. It's a nice segue into what we're going to be looking at around plan, do, review, a plan, do, review cycle. So coaches, before we start the plan, do, review cycle, 2 minutes, have a conversation with the person next to you. Again, this 2 minutes will become probably 45 seconds, so I'm lying to you again, but we're going to pace set this session. I want you to think about questions of attribution. So when you think about what you do with your players, this is a warm-up activity, just a conversation between each other. You stand up out of your seats in a moment, and just have a conversation with these two questions. Questions of attribution. What can the players truly attribute to you as to why they're good at something, or as question 2 says, not good at something? So I don't know where you're at in your season over here. NBL 1 has started up. NBL has just finished. I'm really trying to figure out how the system works over here. You start one season, you finish one, you start the other. It's brilliant in many ways. But we finished the season in the UK. The Pro League's finished, the Junior League's finished. National teams will kick in now for the summer. And many coaches ask me, I want to do exit interviews, or I want to do a postseason evaluation. Number one, you've missed the boat, is my answer to that. Why not do this after 2 months? So when you get data back, you can actually do something about it for the rest of the season instead of waiting till the end of the season and then taking that information, trying to do something at the start of next season. So treatment points throughout your season. If you do exit interviews, if you do surveys, if you do questions with the players, do it 3 times in the season so you can do something with it after you've done it. But just have a conversation, literally 1 minute. What did your players learn from you that they may not have done by themselves, or got from other coaches? That question basically says, what's different about your coaching? If you don't like that question and you want to go a little bit, you want a bit more friction, how did you actually reduce a player's performance this season? And if you think you haven't, you might need to practice reflection on a deeper level. 60 seconds, off you go. You can stand up, let's get moving. I feel like I might have to go back to my teacher days and isn't this amazing? Like, you know, I was a teacher for a long time in London, and, you know, I worked in the inner city London school, challenging kids. And the only way to get them to stop talking was to stand there with your hand up. So, thank you. Anyway, we'll keep moving. Like I said to you, we'll keep moving faster. So, whatever we cover on these slides, it will be available to you after. If there's stuff you want to dig into a little bit later, we can have a conversation. As I said, I'll pace that now as we go. So, do. And that's what we do as coaches. Very often we get stuck on the treadmill of do, and we're generally left with very little time to do anything else. So if you think about your practice planning, today's session will be all about game planning for your games. Plan, do, review cycle for games only. That you can apply the same thing to your practice sessions. So what I'm going to try to attempt today is actually just to get us off the treadmill, okay? So our experiences, Simon and myself, we work with a lot of coaches from USA, Canada, Europe. We don't work with any coaches from this part of the world just because of the time difference. But what we're learning from working with these coaches, amongst many things, because they really let us into their journey, it's quite vulnerable for them, but it's a really privilege for us. We're learning that the best coaches that we work with are the ones that are intentional about a plan, do, review cycle. So yes, they plan their sessions meticulously. They plan their game coaching meticulously. I'm going to put a little bit of spin on that aspect a little bit later. Then obviously the do part is out there. They're on the court. They're doing. They're learning by doing. But they close the loop by following up each session with some intentional reflection. And there's obviously different ways to do it. Today we're just going to show you one way. So, if you look at it as a cycle and cycles that sit within cycles, what we're really talking about here is joining the dots around your daily sessions, plan, do, review, into your seasonal sessions, into your bigger picture, plan, do, review. Okay, so again, these are linked, these are not working in isolation, and the end of one thing becomes the beginning of the next. So again, you can see how the cycle metaphor remains. So today I'm hoping by the end of the session is to show you a way to be intentional around your game day planning, to improve your in-game communication and plan for in-game communication, the coach planning for what they're going to say. Of course, you need to be ready, be organic with it and adaptable as it goes. And then by the end of the session, hopefully you will see how you can apply a very practical and very doable review structure. Okay. So the plan, the first bit, and if you don't mind, I'll walk over here. I'm going to leave these here. I said to Simon, like, we just give one to each of the candidates that are coming to the conference. And then Peter says there's 230. So I don't have enough money for the added baggage for that. So basically, just pair out, if you want one, just pair one out as you walk out the door. They're all the same. It's just the notepads that when you rip it out, fold it over to A5. On the front side, you'll see is the plan bit. On the inside is the do, and at the back is the review. You'll see pictures on the board as we go. So the plan itself is made up of 3 sections. Basically, planning for your game. So you as a coach, like how intentional do you currently plan for how you're going to coach this game? So effectively, who do you need to be in order for the players to be successful in this game? I've had the privilege of coaching against probably every single European country I can think of, except for maybe Azerbaijan. I think I've coached against pretty much every European nation. I've been involved in the national team since 2009. And what I can say is every time I plan for my coaching, it will be somewhat different. If we're playing Serbia, I will need to plan how I'm going to approach that game with the mindset of who do the players need me to be in this game versus if we play my home nation, Ireland, because we'll win by 50. Against Serbia, we could lose by 50. So I've got to plan how I'm going to coach that game based on what the players need from me. The second part of it are your performance keys. Everybody has them. What's your keys to the game, whatever it is, transition defense, offensive rebounding, or tag it up, whatever it may be. And then the third part of the plan is the player focus. So here what we're doing is we're planning for connection with the players, and we're planning in terms of giving them a limited focus so they can actually manage. So if they're having a bad game, what's the one thing we can anchor them back to that's going to help to give them some bit of success? So here's a picture of when we played North Macedonia. This would have been 2023. One of the players actually that played will be on the court today, I believe. And you can see how I was planning for my coaching there. Okay, we were going up against a very physical team. It was going to be a challenging game for our players because of the physicality of North Macedonia that year. And I had to be ready. But I thought we had an advantage because their size and our mobility advantage. I thought we had an advantage to really get after them physically for 40 minutes. So I had to be ready to rotate players and scan for fatigue. So I had to be careful of the blind spot of having to play the best players long minutes and not doing a Jalen Brunson on them. Got to be careful saying that. I believe the Knicks fans in the room. But I had to scan for fatigue and be ready to rotate. So that's who I needed to be and not get caught up in the game and the score and remain attached to the long game. That was the narrative of that game. And keeping the confidence high as well, because with the pace we needed to play at, I had to accept there might be a high level of errors that come with that. So keeping confidence high was important. The on-ball keys, let's not even go there. It's your basic basketball keys to the performance, what we're focused on for this game. But the questions I often had to ask myself, and I still do, who do the players need me to be for this game? Now, I said we were going to pace it, so I'm not going to set an activity here for you, which I was going to. But if you just think for a moment, do you enter your games with this question in mind? Not necessarily what do they need from you, who do they need you to be? Because whether you like it or not, the ripple effect, the domino effect we have on some players can be the gravity can be quite strong. And I know that we don't speak to every player the same way, but are we intentionally planning for that? Are we intentionally planning for how we will behave, how we will communicate? What will be our mindset? What will be our interventions based on this game? Question for you. Again, we won't take any answers, but if you just sit with this thought for a moment, do you regret, just show of hands, as you reflect back, do you regret any moments you've had with your coaching on the sideline? If the answer is yes, put your hand up. So that's the majority of people in the room, okay? I feel the same way. I feel the same way. And when I look back, if I'm honest with myself, there's been moments I could attach shame to that, where I regret my behavior on the sideline, and maybe there's an element of shame creeping in. Now, if you don't reflect back and are honest with yourself, you've got to be careful how those things may manifest themselves as time goes. And suddenly, you may behave a different way on the sideline. So here what we're doing, as we get to the reflection part at the end, you've got to be really honest with yourself about judging how you performed based on how you planned to coach this specific game. And if you're lying to yourself because you're hiding some emotion or feeling, you're probably creating a problem later down the line that will be harder to solve. So that's just a thought maybe I'll leave you with from now, but we won't get too deep into it. It's a bit philosophical. So the player focus, if we go back to a few slides here, the third point is planning for connection and accountability. So here's what you'll see if you pick up one of these as you go out. On that second page, you'll have a list of players' numbers, and I like to put their initials behind them, because if I coach a team for 15 years, I can't remember the numbers. It's really, really incredible. I can't remember it, but I also find incredible that other coaches can. But what this allows me to do is basically go around the warm-up and have an intentional one-to-one with every player before we take to the court. So as they're doing the warm-up, I'll just move around slowly. I'll check in with each one of them. And hey, like Seb up there, so Robbie, one of your guys, ready to play guard or forward. I probably ruined his tournament trying to play him as a hybrid guard forward, by the way, as I reflect back. But, you know, I just had to remind him that he could do it. So that was a prompt for me to go, Seb, you're at your best when you're versatile. You can do this. You've got an advantage here against this team when you're a guard, and you've got an advantage here when you're a forward. So be ready for both at different lineups and so on. So that was the player focus, but again, it was just a way of saying, I'm going to be intentional about connecting with each and every single player before they throw the ball up. Again, so all that was just connected to the, I'm not going to stay on this, but it was whatever was here and previously, we would connect it to the game plan in the change room, which I'm sure you're doing anyway. We won't have time for this, but how do you plan your gaming competitions? If this was if we had twice the time, I'd give you one of these sheets, ask you to fill it out, kind of co-create it with somebody, but you can do that in your own time. Okay, now, moving on to the do part. Okay, so we've gone through the plan. We've talked about what the plan is made up of. Now we move around the cycle into the do section. It's part 2 of 3. And on this one, we're just going to